In a small, dimly lit house at the edge of town, a child named Arya first realized that life was not always kind. Her parents' voices, sharp and cold, often filled the rooms with tension that seemed heavier than the walls themselves. She would sit quietly in the corner, observing, sensing, feeling more than anyone else in the house could. Even as a little girl, she noticed the subtle glances, the unspoken resentments, the invisible chains of fear that tied everyone together. Most nights, she lay awake listening to muffled arguments, wondering why love sometimes felt like pain and why comfort seemed impossible. Why me? She whispered to the dark ceiling. Why was I born into this chaos? Yet, deep within, a quiet spark told her she wasn't just surviving, she was learning. Every raised voice, every cold stare, was an unwelcome teacher, preparing her for something far greater than the walls of her childhood home. By the age of 10, Arya had learned to see beyond the immediate hurt. She observed patterns in her family, anger passed down like heirlooms, fear silently carried from mother to child, and unspoken guilt shaping behaviors she didn't yet understand. While her peers played and laughed freely, she carried an invisible weight, but it made her wise beyond her years. It made her awake in ways that others were not. One evening, after a particularly harsh argument between her parents, Arya retreated to her room and scribbled in her journal. She didn't write about her pain as punishment, but as a puzzle to solve. Why did her father lash out? Why did her mother retreat into silence? With every question, she felt a strange awakening, a sense that the universe had placed her here not to break her, but to refine her. Her suffering was not random, it was sacred, a training ground for her soul. As Arya grew older, she began to notice something remarkable. While many of her friends were unaware of their emotions, she could read the invisible currents in people's hearts. She understood pain, not just her own, but that of everyone around her. Where her family saw control, she saw confusion. Where they saw obedience, she saw fear. And slowly, she began to realize that she could choose differently. She didn't have to repeat their patterns. She could break the chain. High school brought new challenges, but also opportunities. Arya found herself drawn to people who, like her, carried invisible scars. She became a silent observer, learning not only from her family but from the world outside. Each betrayal, each moment of rejection, sharpened her understanding. Pain had become her teacher, heartbreak her compass, and she began to cultivate something rare: emotional awareness. Arya's first true awakening came when she learned about boundaries. She realized that love without respect is just control, and care without consciousness is manipulation. For the first time, she said no not with anger, but with clarity. She stopped trying to earn the affection of those who only demanded compliance. She started protecting her energy, valuing peace over the fleeting approval of others. She discovered that walking away was not weakness, it was wisdom. Her parents' chaos, once a source of despair, became the crucible in which her strength was forged. Every cold dinner, every shouted argument, every moment of loneliness had prepared her for the world outside. The darkness she had lived through taught her empathy, resilience, and the rare ability to shine even when surrounded by shadows. Arya began to see her family's dysfunction not as a curse, but as a catalyst for transformation. By the time she reached adulthood, Arya had mastered something many never do: understanding without attachment. She could witness her family's pain, their anger, and their fears without being consumed by them. Compassion replaced resentment. Forgiveness became her quiet power. She learned that she could love without losing herself, care without being drained, and protect her peace while remaining emotionally open. This detachment wasn't cold. It was conscious, sacred even. One night, reflecting on her journey, Arya finally understood the truth. The darkness of her childhood was never the end of her story. It was the beginning of her awakening. She had been born into conflict, not to suffer endlessly, but to learn how to rise above it. Every scar, every tear, every lonely night had been a step toward wisdom. Her soul had been shaped by fire, pressure, and shadow, and it had emerged resilient, radiant, and alive. Arya began helping others, not out of superiority, but out of empathy. She became a guiding light for those still trapped in the cycles she once endured. Through her journey, she understood that awakening is not about escaping darkness. It is about learning to shine through it. The family that once wounded her had also initiated her transformation. They were not her downfall, they were her doorway. Now, she walks in the world with the calm certainty of someone who has endured and understood. The pain that once threatened to break her now fuels her purpose. She recognizes that true growth is often raw, lonely, and brutal, but it is also sacred. The trials of her past have taught her self-reliance, clarity, detachment, and the deepest form of love. Love that respects boundaries, values peace, and embodies freedom. Arya's story is proof that light can emerge from darkness, that souls born into chaos are not doomed. They are chosen. Chosen to witness, chosen to learn, chosen to rise. She embodies the truth that suffering is not pointless, that pain is a teacher, and that the human spirit can transform even the harshest beginnings into profound awakening. As Arya looks back on her journey, she whispers a final affirmation, not just for herself, but for everyone who struggles in darkness. I was born to bring light. My pain has purpose. My suffering made me wise. And in that moment, she knows, the universe does not punish the awakened soul, it prepares it. And in that preparation, she has discovered the unshakable truth. Within the darkest night, her light shines brightest.